This is another in a series of videos I've been doing to try and establish what I and what we put in our adverts for other cars that we sell as real world fuel economy. The reason we're doing the videos is, as much as anything else, we've got a bit of time to do them at the moment, but also because we do get asked, pretty much with every car that we sell, with every make and model, which is predominantly Honda and Lexus, what sort of economy should I expect to get? Because I think most people, like me, tend to take with a pinch of salt the fuel economy figures that the manufacturers give you, because most of it is kind of done laboratory style, so there's no undulations in the road, there's no wind outside, so the economy figures tend to be far higher than you actually get. And also that if you believe the road tests done by sort of the motoring press, their figures always seem to be horribly low. And there's a particularly good reason for that, and it's something that I mention in all these videos, which I find incredibly frustrating. Normally when you look at a road test of a car, a journalist is thrown into the car who's used to driving all sorts of different vehicles, which is fine. And nothing wrong with them as people or the drivers themselves or what they're capable of, but they tend not to drive the cars as you would drive them. Now, if you're going to be buying a high-end sports car, you'd expect to drive it hard. If you are buying a family car to drive your family around in, as a diesel, you're trying basically to get reliability and fuel economy out of the car. So you would tend to drive it in a certain way. So that's what I'm going to try and mimic. So what I do on these videos is very simple, and it isn't scientific in any way. So, but I think it's representative. I mix the road test up and the route into sort of a couple of sections, or a few sections. The first part's actually quite hard on the car. Car is started from stone cold, and it is really cold this morning. It was -4 last night. It's only 1 degree now. So it's going to take a while for the engine to warm up. It's pretty much uphill along sort of back roads, B roads, and a couple of A roads up to the motorway. So that'll be my first checkpoint. I'll check in as to sort of what economy I've achieved at that point, which I'm not expecting to be particularly good, by the way. Then there'll be a section of motorway which is a roughly 10-12 miles, and then back down parallel to that on the A road, A38, and then back roads like this back to the point at which we started. I will be sticking to the speed limits, because I think that's only fair on the manufacturers. I think if people exceed the speed limits, then they can't moan about economy necessarily, because that's not fair on the manufacturers. But it doesn't mean I'll be hanging around either. I will be driving to them and up to them, and I won't be dawdling. So I'll drive as I would drive my own personal car. So coming to fuel economy, and as I put in lots of videos, how to get the best out of these particular types of cars. I've owned lots of Civics, Civic Tourers, the diesels, 1.6s and the 2.2s. It's relatively simple. It's all about smoothness with driving the cars. If you use the options available on the car, you've got the economy button there, you can press that on, it aids the economy of the vehicle, changes the throttle slightly and the air conditioning. Not that I'll be having that on today. It also gives you these little green lights, which are little prompts, so you put your foot down, they kind of dim away to blue, and then they come back to green, so in the back of your mind you can see them at all times. And you've also got a little gear prompter to tell you when to change up. The fact is, you get used to driving the car as you drive it, but the long and the short of it is really, really simple. The smoother you drive, the smoother the throttle applications you make, the better. And getting up into as high a gear as possible that the engine can cope with without fluffing or flustering is pretty much key to it. In these cars, you can be in 6th gear realistically, as I am now, at 45 miles an hour. So if you're holding on to 4th or 5th longer than that, then it does hurt the economy. But I tend to get up to speed reasonably quickly. I put my foot down, get up, so the car's not labouring for too long. Also, looking ahead. So if you can see the traffic stopped in the distance, or you know it's slowing down, well, back the throttle off rather than wait till the last minute and slam the brakes off and then accelerate again, because those sudden stops, sudden pickup of speeds really hurt the economy of the car, from my personal experience anyway. If also you find basically that the economy isn't what you're hoping to get, or more importantly, you've been getting good economy but suddenly the economy dips away after a little bit of ownership, normally you look at a few things. First of all, is the trip you're doing different? Because basically this is where this test is, as I said, pretty unscientific. It's not going to include urban driving. It's not going to be city centre driving, where the economy won't be as good. It simply won't be. It can't be. Also, it's got hills, but it's not particularly hilly. So if it's very hilly areas that you're driving on, or you've suddenly started driving to, then again the economy is not going to be as good. It's as simple as that. But if those things are not in the equation and it's suddenly dropped, basically think of a car as you are yourself as a human being. You need to draw in air to breathe. If you try and run with a scarf wrapped around your mouth, you're not going to get the oxygen in your lungs to be able to run. Exactly the same as an engine. It needs lots of air coming in, and it doesn't want that to be limited. So air filters for the engines are common. So if it's blocked up, the car won't perform as well. But the other very common one, actually, and again very easily fixed, is after a decent drive and you've hit the brakes a few times, just go around the wheels of the car very carefully. I don't want anyone to burn themselves. Put your hand down towards the centre of the wheel and just see if any of the wheels are warm or hot, or hotter than the others. It could be that your brakes are just binding slightly or badly, but if it's slightly, that's enough, because it's just causing drag. It's a bit like riding a bike with your brakes slightly on. So what you want to do is just get those attended to. It's normally literally just the little sliders where the brake pads are sliding in and out. It might be twisted or just stuck in place, basically, or the caliper stuck slightly and it just needs freeing up. So just have that attended to. By the way, this particular car, as you'll know obviously from the video description, it's a 1.6 diesel Tourer. This particular car has covered just over 60,000 miles. It's been well maintained, so it's in good state of health. It's not a new car, it's not particularly old or high mileage one, but it's obviously well run in, so it should be representative of what you'd expect to see or get. So we are pretty much at the start of coming to the motorway now. Up to this point, we are currently at 51.7 miles per gallon, which is, like I said, it's hard to judge because, as I said, it's been slightly uphill and the engine's cold. But I'll check in after I've finished this stint on the motorway. Right then, so we're coming to the end of the motorway section now. Mileage is up to 14 miles or so it's just about 10-11 miles on the motorway. A little bit snowy now all of a sudden. Fuel economy has now gone up, which I'd expect. It's gone up to 59.2 miles per gallon is the current average on the car. Motorway traffic is actually quite relatively busy, but able to maintain a relatively even pace to the whole thing. So as I said, what I'll do now is head back down the A38 even, which runs parallel to the M5. As I said, weather conditions cold, a little bit breezy, so it's about as hard as it gets for a car without a lot of standing water, which obviously makes it even harder still. But I'll update towards the end of the main road section. Right then, so we're 24.5 miles in, coming to the end of the section of the A38 now. Traffic's been relatively heavy actually, a bit of traffic, a couple of traffic lights. That's where auto stop does help, I must admit. You know, for the whole duration, sat still, fuel economy didn't go down because the engine switched itself off and turned itself back on again as soon as I pressed the clutch pedal. So it does come into play. I'm currently averaging 66.4 miles per gallon. So by any measure, I think that's pretty good. I will do the final check a mile or so back from where we started from, so not far to go now. So we're on the final stretch now, back down the little B roads, close to where we started from. Another factor with fuel economy, of course, is when people jump into a car, especially people who are driving or having previously driven petrol engined cars, they do tend to struggle to get the economy out of diesels that people who have been used to diesels. The reason for that is normally quite simple. People don't trust, you know, I'm currently in 5th gear at 40 miles an hour now. If I was driving a petrol car, I'd probably be in 4th or 3rd. They don't have that kind of lugging capacity that the diesels have. So it's having that trust to know that the engine will just pull that huge amount of torque that diesels produce. Because fundamentally, regardless of, you know, air filters and brakes and that kind of thing, the most common cause of poor fuel economy is actually driving style. And so the first thing to look at is yourself. You know, am I driving the car in a way that will gain the best economy out of the vehicle? And I'm not talking about being over the top and sort of driving like a sort of a little old lady everywhere you're driving. Far from it. I've driven this trip in what I think is a perfectly normal fashion. I know these cars particularly well, having owned plenty of them, and I tend to average mid-60s myself. This particular trip, I've averaged 68.2 miles per gallon, which is pretty much exactly where I'd expect it to be, in all honesty. It's a very, very efficient engine, and one that, you know, the economy comes relatively easy to the car. Hope the video has been of some help. There we go.